Not every conversation is meant to happen with every single person in this world. We have to understand that we're going to have differences. We have to know who we can have these conversations with, who we can listen to, who we can engage with curiosity, how we can validate. And sometimes it's okay to walk away from these conversations.
Welcome to Healthy Living, Wellness and Prevention, Medical Innovation, the Informed Side of Care. Welcome to Baptist Health Talk.
I'm your host, Willard Shepard. Welcome back to a new episode of Baptist Health Talk, where we answer your most searched questions on trending topics. As voting day comes closer, today we're talking about how to cope with election stress and fatigue, including practical tips, ways to help you stay grounded, calm, and resilient through all this election buzz. We're joined today by Janelle Falcon and Manuela Rodriguez. Both are licensed marriage and family therapists here at Baptist Health. Thanks to both of you for being with us. So, Janelle, how do we end up in this spot with all this social media, text messages coming to us? It is a lot of stress.
It is a lot of stress. And thank you for having us here today to have this very important conversation. But back to the question, it is a lot of stress. We're at this point in our lives where technology is a very wonderful thing, does us a lot of favors. However, on the flip side of it, can create a lot of stress. And what we know about stress is it has its mental health implications and physical health implications. So what we're seeing is on the emotional side of it is that, we can become more irritable. We can tend to isolate because we're doing some of that doom scrolling, spending our endless hours or free time on our phones or on our computers. And on the physical health side of it, if it's creating more of that stress, then we can see physical signs or manifestations of things like headaches, stomach aches, muscle tension, even interruptions in our sleep patterns as well.
So now, is that just the time you're doing this, the number one thing to be able to identify, wow, I'm kind of going down what could be a bad path here?
Sometimes we go down what a lot of people call like a rabbit hole, and we spend endless times kind of on our technology. But sometimes it's not the amount of time that we spend on the technology, because each person is going to be affected so differently. So we have to know how we are responding to certain things. Tap into yourself and be intentional and mindful about how you're responding and how you're feeling to certain things. So if you're finding yourself getting more and more upset, or more and more anxious or distressed when you're scrolling through social media, maybe take a break.
Now, from a psychological perspective, why does this cause so much stress?
I think we see the impact, as Janelle was mentioning, on our physical well being, our emotional well being, but even how we're interacting with others, right? Our children, our relationships, our coworkers. We're going to see that it's not just going to be, your daily tasks are going to be disrupted by this stress and this anxiety. And we're going to see that's going to impact all areas of your well being.
Now, do you see any specific triggers here?
Well, I think specifically we can say interaction with others, right? The way that we're interacting with others is impacted by our irritability, or if we're not able to communicate and express ourselves properly, it's going to impact our relationships.
Especially when it comes to differences. Let's
Mhm.
say, I think we're living in a world where everybody is expressing their differences so freely, which is a beautiful thing. However, sometimes those differences can be extremely divisive. So understanding how we can respect our differences and understand when it's okay to disagree.
Now, Janelle, how do we balance staying informed? If anybody wants people out there informed, it's me. So therefore, how do we balance that with also being mentally healthy?
Let me preface this answer with, it's easier said than done, right? I know we're having a very important conversation, but everything we're talking about here today is much easier said than done. But let's start with some self-compassion. Let's be kind to ourselves and knowing that anything that we do shouldn't be done with this expectation of perfection, neither from ourselves or others, right? So let's be kind to ourselves. Now, let's set some boundaries around anything and everything that we do. whether that's how much time we're spending on social media or, just anything in life. So looking at how much you're consuming, whether that's on social media or just news, or how much reading you're doing, taking a look at whether you're choosing to watch the news or you're choosing to read the news. How is it that you're consuming some of this information? Can you set some boundaries around that? Can you choose to look at the information that's important to you rather trying to consume it all, which kind of seems like an impossible task right now?
Now, research is showing that political anxiety, different and distinct from general anxiety. Manuela, what is that difference? And why does that matter for a person's health and those of you trying to help us?
Absolutely. And generalized anxiety is a proper diagnosis in the DSM-5, and you can get diagnosed with that. Now, political anxiety is not in the DSM-5. We're hearing more about it and we're talking about it more. So the conversation is happening that we're seeing these signs and symptoms, but it won't be a diagnosis. It will be a discussion that will be held if you're working with a mental health therapist, if you're expressing some of these concerns and signs that you're seeing, but you won't have the diagnosis of political anxiety. So we do want to clarify that the diagnosis is generalized anxiety. And when you're working with your therapist, you're going to be talking about other areas in your life that are being impacted by this anxiety specific to the politics.
Janelle, you touched on this a little bit about our own family members, our coworkers, people that are close to us, our friends, when it comes to talking about these kinds of things. Some people have lost friends, lost relationships over this. So how do we manage that?
I go back to the compassion. Not only do we offer ourselves compassion, we have to offer others compassion. And we also have to know our audience. Not every conversation is meant to happen with every single person in this world. We have to understand that we're going to have differences. We have to know who we can have these conversations with, who we can listen to, who we can engage with curiosity, how we can validate. And sometimes it's okay to walk away from these conversations. We don't have to engage with everybody that we meet. We can understand that, maybe right now I can't have this conversation. I need to take care of myself. It's important that we care for ourselves first and foremost before caring for someone else.
But that gets tricky when it can be a family member,
Surely.
especially a loved one.
Surely.
So how do we do that?
Coming up with a plan, right? I'm a firm believer of let's have a solid plan. If you know that somebody's gonna push your buttons a little bit more, we all have that aunt or that uncle or that cousin or somebody who's more persistent about having this conversation. Learn how to shift the conversation. Learn maybe how to become a little bit more curious about their perspective, where it's not a battle about opinions. It's about becoming curious about their perspective. How did they get to where they are? And you can be a little bit more empathetic about their stance. And you can become a little bit more empathetic and understanding about their opinion and not try to change it. We're not here to change opinions. We're not here to change who they're choosing to vote for.
Manuela, how do we maintain everybody, especially in our country, our free speech rights, be able to express themselves and their opinions without crossing that line or feeling that they're threatened by other people?
I think that's a heavy question, right? Because we know that we want and we have the freedom of speech, but we have to be mindful of others. And we talk about relationships, and as family therapists, we're constantly talking about the system. We are individuals that are in a part of this system. So everyone around us is impacted by our words, by our actions, and even sometimes even nonverbal reactions that we can have. So it's important to take a step back and have that self-awareness and say, okay, what are the things that I'm saying? Thinking before I speak. Is it necessary to say these things right now? Is this the right audience? Is this the right time? Am I ready to say these things to my family member, to my friends, to my partner? And that's the only person that we have control over is ourselves. So if we have that self-awareness, we're able to have more empathetic conversations with our entire system.
Janelle, what role does self-care play in managing this kind of fatigue? What are some specific recommendations you have for us?
Self-care is something we talk about day in and day out. And, I mentioned that when we think of self-care, it's something that we usually think is a big grand gesture towards ourselves, whether it's those massages or those mani-pedis, which I happen to love. However, it can also be those 5 minutes of just a break for ourselves. So think about listening to your favorite song, a moment of just prayer and reflection, or just going for a jog. So it's those mindful minutes that you can take for yourself to help relax. Why? Because we know it helps reduce stress, it helps reduce anxiety, it releases all these feel good hormones like endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, all these wonderful things that have wonderful implications for your emotional health and your physical health.
I was telling both of you that, in my life as a broadcast journalist, I've been throughout this process with our elected officials, the presidential candidates, those who have been elected, unfortunately being in the nation's capital on January 6th. And these types of things where information is so important, but I've had people just say to me recently, I'm sick of it. I wish that it was over. And that is a wearing type of circumstance, I think, on our community. And big picture, what kind of advice do you have for each of us over the next couple of weeks in terms of managing our day-to-day life?
I think the message is also a message of compassion and hope to say, let's continue to believe in our community, in the people that are around us and in our country, and continuing to stand and say, I'm going to share this information because I believe it. I want to give this information. I want to become educated as well. I see a lot of young minds also saying, I'm over this information, or I don't want to get this information. I'm like, wait, there's so much power in knowing and in education about the politics. Your voice can be heard. So again, reminding our community to have hope and to continue to vote and speak and share.
Janelle, do you think that a factor in this is that the good thing is we can get information from so many different places now, but many times that information doesn't have the same vetting as, where my career was. And so therefore, there are benefits to it, but do you see drawbacks with that, with people not being able to kind of come together with what they agree on?
There's certainly pros and cons, right? Now we can get information from so many different places. It's at the palm of our hands 24/7. So yes, there's this idea of, well, is the information reliable if, we're just searching all these social media platforms? We don't know. So I always encourage people to make sure that whatever information you are consuming is reliable. We have a duty to ourselves to make sure that whatever information we are seeking out is correct, right? Knowledge is power, but what knowledge are we seeking out? So start there. And then we also have the duty to act on that power. I want to encourage everybody, A, to stay informed, and then to act on that information that they're gaining.
What about on election night? What should we do as we head to this crescendo here coming up?
I think practicing some grounding techniques at that moment, taking a couple deep breaths, staying with your family and friends that you feel supported and welcomed around, right? And I think after is also an important discussion to have, right? Because we're all going to be continuing to grow as a country. So we have to come together, whatever the turnout is, right? We will grow together as a country. So we're going to have to come together and stay united, stand united, like with your program.
Stand united. I would add, let's be kind. Let's be kind because everybody has a desired outcome. There's going to be someone out there that's unhappy with whatever the outcome is. Let's be kind to one another. Let's come together with whatever it is, because at the end of the day, as a country, we all want to succeed. So celebrate also whatever the outcome is. Celebrate the fact that you acted on your right to vote, and celebrate the fact that you can come together even as a family and celebrate whatever that right is, however you decided to exercise it.
Two last things for you quickly. Number one, I voted by mail. They've done an incredible job here in Miami-Dade County. Christina White, our supervisor of elections, who's put all these programs together where you can track your ballot online, is voting and like, I've done it, I don't want to hear more about it. Is that a healthy thing to do?
I mean, vote and go. It's what is a fit for you, right? Everyone will find comfort in either voting early, going in person, mailing in their ballot. I think it's respecting the decision that everyone makes, but definitely voting.
Because I kind of felt like, for me, I was like, okay, wow, I got it done. I'm like,
it feels like a nice relief, right? It's no one size fits all. You know, some people are going to vote and say, okay, I'm done with this. And some people are going to vote and want to stay informed. It's really knowing what's good for you. If you're feeling so distressed all the time, being inundated with all this information, maybe it's good to take a break. But if you want to stay connected, because that's what helps you, by all means.
Last thing for both of you, but very important. It looks like in this election that we may not actually know on election night who will be the next resident at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. So therefore, that seems to me to be an extremely magnified, stressful situation for everyone in our entire community and country. So during those moments, how should we handle this?
You know, I talk about anxiety a lot. It's one of my specialties. And with anxiety, it comes uncertainty. And I understand that a lot of people will feel quite distressed, quite anxious during that waiting period. What I ask people to do is remain hopeful, because while people are dotting their I's and crossing their T's, the hope is that we'll get that certainty at the end. So there's not that back and forth of what if. What if something went wrong, or what if something wasn't counted correctly, or what if it should have ended up in a different way? So hopefully through that uncertainty, we will find out that certainty in the end of whoever should prevail.
I have to piggyback off Janelle, and she's been doing her program throughout the month talking about these election anxiety. And I think it's important to stay calm, again, stay hopeful and united with your family and friends, and continuing to have these conversations about how we can come together in these times instead of falling apart.
Well, thanks to both of you on a topic that wasn't on the curriculum when you were doing your studies, but you can go teach it now, because I'm sure it is on the curriculum at our alma mater and our other fine schools here in the state of Florida. And thank you very much. Something you wouldn't normally think about, but a tremendous amount of stress in this area. Okay, so be sure to hit that subscribe button on our channel here to keep up with the very latest health and wellness information and tips from our experts. Thanks for watching, and go vote.
Find additional valuable health and wellness information on our resource blog at baptisthealth.net/news. And be sure to interact with us on our social media channels for live and upcoming events. Baptist Health Talk is brought to you by Baptist Health, the warmer side of care.